So the Macho Man Syndrome, I've got a lot of interesting things to talk to you about. Because it's after lunch, we'll make it a bit more interactive because we have the extra 15 minutes or so also. But just kind of a summary before we jump into it too much is that I always emphasize, right, because in the era of like political correctness and all that, that accepting the reality that there are male health disparities, right? Like Mexican men have the highest rates of overweight and obesity combined. They have higher rates of uncontrolled A1C and uncontrolled high blood pressure and all of that. But kind of like I mentioned in the last talk, where that to make men healthier and hopefully happier is to make the lives of their kids and their esposas better, right? So hopefully that's what we're trying to do here. But a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about, it's more in depth for you guys to understand that there are dimensions of machismo, and the extreme version is valemadrismo, and we have to understand this para llegarle a la gente. So the Macho Man Syndrome, understanding and persuading male health behavior. So what comes to mind when you hear the Macho Man Syndrome? Let's start with an activity here. If we go here, go ahead and join this where it says up here, go to menti.com. I'll give you guys a couple minutes. And type in this code into menti.com, and it will give you the ability to text in what comes to mind when you think of the Macho Man Syndrome. And while we wait, y'all can go ahead and start sharing. So, Emiliana, what comes to mind when you think of Macho Man?
They don't think anything's wrong. They always think that todo está bien.
No va a pasar nada.
No pasa nada.
No pasa nada, exactly. Okay. So I have a couple examples here. So machismo, and again, when we say machismo, it's not the common phrase of toxic. That's not what it is at all. Machismo is just this, and we'll define it later. It's this kind of like bravado, que no pasa nada, this like arrogant fearlessness. There are a lot of different ways to explain it. My way, yeah, my way or the highway. And it's also not selective, right? So someone up here, my stubborn son. Machismo is not just older Hispanic men. How many of you guys have teenagers or little kids? You know, I always say that little kids are always trying to hurt themselves. Like that's just what they're alive to do, try and find ways to put themselves in danger. Same thing for teenagers and so on and so forth. No one tells me what to do. Invincible, fearless, prideful. I'm always right, neglect. Who wants to expand on one? Who put one up here? Who wants to expand on one of these? Look at who put, well, you don't have to say who put it, but selfishness. What do you think of when you see selfishness? Why would someone put that? Go ahead.
I'll say I put that.
Okay.
Oftentimes because men are very like self-centered, like they
Yeah.
don't think beyond the scope of like, you know, the whole picture.
Yeah. Give me an example.
For example, what it could, how it could impact the family. Say, for example, then the wife kind of like takes a role.
Yep.
To be able to help him, the way it impacts the whole family per se, if there's support, no support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. And then so invincible. Look at that right in the middle. I got this. My dad. That's a very common one. Look at. Ya párale. Oh man, that's what. See, it's really interesting because it's hard, and that's why I always say you have to bring in an outsider, because if it's your papa, if it's your tío, they're not going to listen to you more than likely, because ya párale, ya déjame. There are all these deflective tactics that you'll see. So thank you guys for sharing. And yes, you're onto something with all of that. All that there. Okay. So yeah, so a few different things here. And these are some of the things that I was referencing earlier. This is from my work during my PhD. I think I made this like 4 years ago. But Hispanics and diabetes versus non-Hispanic whites, amputation odd ratio is 1.3, so above 1 indicates a higher odds ratio, right? Mortality related to diabetes, 1.4. Look at that one right there. End-stage renal disease, 2.6, 2.5 times the risk of going on dialysis. And then 30% of Hispanics with diagnosis of diabetes have an A1C greater than 9. And this is what you guys see out here, right? Does y'all's experience align with what the data is saying? Exactly. And so see, this is what we're trying to, maybe not, well, I'll just say, this is what we're trying to avoid. It's the unfortunate reality de que el hombre no va a hacer caso hasta que le pasa algo, and even then they don't want to listen, right? I saw a patient one time who, he had had multiple heart attacks, and he was also from Chihuahua like my parents, and his esposa brought him in for like a free visit. You know, there's no barrier. It's free, it's after work, and he came in, he's like, no, es que para mí, nomás fue como un dolor muscular. And I was like, you were hospitalized for 4 days. Like, that's not un dolor muscular. Not everybody learns even the hard way. Okay. So here's a little bit more in terms of the data. When we look at the longevity, Moises was talking about this, the female life expectancy being in the mid to upper 80s, but then look at the male life expectancy being in the mid to lower 70s. But one of the things that I always emphasize, does anybody know about health span? It's kind of a self-explanatory, right? But does anybody know of the health span in the United States? Being the living a certain duration of time with the absence of debilitating disease. What is it in the U.S.? Well, if your lifespan is 75, your health span is going to be lower because you get sick before you die, right? So it's early 60s. Actually, I think for men, it's 60. I take that back. It's late 60s, so 67. So if the average male health span is 67, where you're having a decent quality of life, and the average age of retirement is 65, and honestly, among Hispanos, it's probably later because we have to work a little bit longer because we're kind of behind. So it literally shows you that the men retire at 67. They pretty much are sick leading into retirement, and especially right after retirement. And congratulations, you get to die at 72 years old, and you don't get to enjoy any of your life. So that's the little machismo in me. I say it straight, right? That's the reality of what we're facing in the community. And
I saw that data through Social Security.
Did you tell me about? I haven't seen the latest.
So Social Security determination based on the life expectancy of someone, like your example, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
They work till they're 65, and those unclaimed Social Securities is what shows the longevity of that.
Wow. Yeah.
Because they're working longer, they retire even 67.
Yeah.
They have 6 months of disability income that they're claiming.
Wow.
And it stops at 6 months.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. But yeah, it's the reality. And then even here, I don't know the source of the data, but one of the things, and we can have a discussion on this, but one of the things that I have an issue with is, have y'all heard of the Hispanic paradox, the Hispanic health paradox, where Latinos typically live longer even though we have higher rates of disease? And I haven't looked at the latest data, but I'm like, I feel like that data is based off of people that were like in the 90s. So if the data that's coming up right now, it's among people that have lived their life from 2024 backwards, right? So those are people that lived a large part of their life in the 1950s, 1960s. The world's totally different now. And so what I think you're going to start seeing in the future is that the Hispanic health paradox was from the older generation that grew up in a different time. I would bet money that you take the kids that were born in the 90s, the early 2000s, the kids that are now, yeah, they're Hispanic, but that's a totally different generation, totally different lifestyle. So I'm curious on that. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Anybody thought on that before?
I think that like I guess the Mexicans that come from the rancho living, it's like all organic.
Yeah,
or like,
yeah,
it's
it's possible. Yeah, it's because here, this is data from the U.S., but how many of the Mexican canciones are about mi viejito, mi viejita? They live till they're 90, right? So it's important stuff to know about. More data here. When we look at male health disparities, not specific for Hispanics, but this is where I say we have to be honest, right? Like we care about kids, we care about women, we care about different minorities, but we leave behind like the majority of men. Here is an example. Men suffer disproportionate rates of a lot of different things. Look at the disproportionate rate of unintentional injuries from men. Construction workers, roofing, all that different stuff, right? Diabetes, more prevalent in men. Suicidality, if I remember right, God, is it 8 out of 10 suicides are men? 8 out of 10 people that are the victim of a homicide are men? That's huge. That's not good. I mean, it's not good that it's happening in general, but the disproportionate rate is terrible, right? And then heart disease, homicide, all that. So, and again, why do these disparities exist? We'll have another interactive session in a moment, but if you think about it, a lot of times, what do you hear about wages between men and women? Who makes more? Men. By far, men make more. But if you take out the top 1 to 10% of men, the numbers are very close. So the highest performers are very often men, but a huge chunk of the population is super left behind. I think I saw data that 20 million women are below the poverty line. That's a lot. But if you looked at the data that, oh, men just make more money, you lose the reality that 17 million men are below the poverty line. So a lot is going into this that we typically don't hear, we typically kind of overlook. So now that we're on the topic, we could just go around the room for time's sake, but what do y'all think is causing these disparities? Any of them, really? What'd you say, marriage? Yeah, well, yeah. I'm trying to think if the marriage one is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so what? Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. So what do you mean by environment? I know you've
especially I myself, I'm first generation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, healthcare was just appointments. So oh, you have to get your vaccines, and that was it. And if my head hurts, take Tylenol.
Yeah.
And then in terms of men, it was kind of oh, me duele, pero I'm not gonna go get.
Just keep going.
So
yeah.
The environment was never
my foot's broken, but I still got to go to work.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so la cultura more so.
Basically,
Yeah. Because that's always an interesting thing where cultura is a product of the environment. A lot of people think, oh, well, nosotros los mexicanos tenemos a certain cultura. And I'm like, yeah, but that cultura is very similar to rural Venezuela, rural Black America, because it's where you're raised, right? It's not really that you're Mexican. Well, it is in a sense because we all have traditions and stuff, but all of this macho Mexicano stuff can be applied depending on where you're raised and in what aspect. So we've got marriage, which to an extent there's some truth there. We have environment. Anybody else? Why do these disparities exist?
Maybe like social pressures.
What do you mean?
So I've seen many times, and this speaking from personal experience, like my dad, my tios. I mean, going back to what culture is, like hanging out together, like whenever it's your day off, and for some reason there's always an association with alcohol.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
family events, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's always alcohol, right? I mean, I'm not saying I don't drink, but
Yeah.
like the way that they drink.
The intensity of it.
Intensity, right? Because
Yeah.
my dad takes it to another level.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen them I've seen my mom get mad at him. I've seen other tios, I've
Yeah.
had a tio that did not take care of himself and got liver cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And he passed away.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, taking it to that other level,
Well, it's such an interesting, and thanks for sharing that because that's just the honest to God truth where it's all those pressures, but I feel like a lot of times when you're coming from the rancho and everybody knows your business because it's such a small community, a lot of the gente have that's where that que dirá la gente comes from, and it enables you to keep going, right? It's, no, pues van a decir, and excuse the word, but you're going to see, this is literally in my research where they're like, no, pues este mandilón, tu esposa te dice que no vas a tomar. And literally that's what the guys would say, and whether it's good or bad, you can interpret it however you want, but that's literally a very important influence, is the social circle that you have and the perception that you want others to have of you. Anybody else?
I think that there is a glorification of the male role in the Hispanic family.
Yeah.
When a baby
Yeah.
is born, oh, it's a boy, it's a
Yeah.
boy. It's a baby.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
baby, right?
Glorification's a
But
good
there
word.
is- Yes, there's this glorification, so there's that pressure
Yeah.
in that male to be the provider, to be the strong one, to be
Yeah.
the invincible, to
Yeah, to be everything.
everything.
Like my dad and a lot of the Mexicanos say, it's para nosotros no hay imposibles. I'm like, yeah, that's a good mentality, but it can also backfire.
And the legacy of the family.
Yeah.
Because they get married, the children have their last name.
Yeah.
See, so all of that.
Oh, yeah, the traditions of it. Someone else? You had your hand raised?
I was gonna say also maybe lack of health coverage and then the sex of the medical provider. I
Yeah.
have an uncle, oh my God, he's so machista.
Oh, yeah.
And he went through a medical crisis this summer.
Esa que vas a ver. That's what they'll say.
His saying or his phrase, es igual, es igual.
Of-
He says all the time, es igual.
No.
So when he was at the hospital, me being me, like real petty, I guess. I called him, ¿cómo estás? No, aquí estoy, bien mal. No, es igual. Es
Oh,
igual."
good, good.
So,
Yes.
like,
You see, that's what you do. That's what we'll. You fight machismo with machismo. It's one of the strategies. That's amazing. I see what. Oh man, you hit him while he was down. But that was the only way. It was the only way he was gonna listen. They're below the belt. Hey, but you never forget below the belt shots.
And
Yeah.
I told him, I said, you're not gonna get my sympathy because we've always told you, like, take
Yeah.
care, and you have the support, not only within your
Good.
household, but even from afar, and you don't listen, so it's like, es igual.
Friends tell you what you don't want to hear. The people that care about you tell you the truth. I had another one. Or no pasa nada. Be like, no que no. No que no pasaba nada. You in the back, sir?
Educational opportunity and support for achieving educational opportunity.
Yeah. Can you expand on that a little bit? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, just the idea of going to college and or being able to support a child to go to college
Yeah.
based on your economical situation, like a farm worker,
Yeah.
So you really have to want to go. I think things like the GI Bill
Yeah.
made some impact there, to help people go to college, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, if you didn't have things like that, then it
The
would be
support.
more difficult for you.
And even now, I think that it can be kind of confusing because in the past, and it's still mostly to this day, like more education, typically more opportunity. But now with like social media and seeing all the different things out there, you have young, guys and girls that are 18, 19, or 17, and they say, well, I won't make money till I'm 22. Houses are this much. And my friends go straight into construction, and yeah, it's a hard life, but they start making money. They have 4 years of ventaja. And in reality, opportunity cost, they have way bigger of an advantage. So people are confused on what's the best route to take. So thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's go into this a little bit more. These are the different ones, the intrapersonal, we talked about it. So like in terms of what you perceive internally, no, pues es igual si tengo diabetes o no. Es igual si no tengo el riñón. I'm like, well, you'll find out. No, es igual si no tienes functioning kidneys, right? The learned behavior of the past. When you're from the rancho, if in the closest hospital is 5 hours a day, was just get dirt and literally put it on where you hit yourself on the leg. Like that's the mentality that we're coming from. The masculine norms are another one. And of course, the environmental, the political, the education, the cost of living. And some of this stuff is out of people's control, right? And that's where men are struggling in general. So my research is, how do you motivate your tío? How do you motivate your dad? How do you how do you get them to at least consider? How do you plant a seed to change their thoughts as it relates to diabetes and being more proactive? And here's the summary. This is a good one to take a picture of. It's the determinants of health behavior, and the acronym is CORPUS. Oh yeah, and we're in the Valley, so this is my first time giving a talk in the Valley, and I always use y'all as an example, I'm sorry. But when I'm giving this talk, I say, look, here's how you remember it. The determinants of health behavior for Mexican men is CORPUS. CORPUS is near the Valley, and you have some of the highest rates, if not the highest rates in the country down here. So I use the Valley as an example in that we need to keep promoting health. But do any of these stand out to you guys? I'll go through them, but anyone interested in a particular one? So I can share. So cultural customs, right? So food-based. This was fascinating. When I was interviewing the 40 Mexicanos, right? Some of them, they're just, the chicharroneadas. Like, these men and women work really hard all week. And when I give my psychology of obesity talk, I say, food and fun are an oasis in the desert of life. That's what it is. Life is work. Life is trabajo. Life, especially if you're working as a rufero, and I say, hey, ve a correr, ve a entrenar. They're not going to do it. That's literally physically not impossible, but very difficult. So it's a food-based culture. The origin formation of health behavior, I coined it as poverty programming. So what that means, the origin formation of health behavior, is that when you grow up and you're an agricultor, like many of these men were, And la siembra is your gimnasio. You don't develop a skill of like, oh, I ate more than I needed, than I usually do. I need to go exercise because that wasn't a thing in the past, right? So la siembra is your ejercicio. And two, the fact that you're in poverty in a more isolated region. Remember, we're talking about 40, 50, 60-year-old men that were growing up at a different time versus now. But this is the aging population we need to focus on. There was no calorie counting. Because like my abuelo used to say, like, teníamos una olla and eran 90% agua, 10% frijoles, because there were no frijoles that year, because the siembra had gone poorly. So again, the world shifted. So it shifted so quickly. When these guys came from Mexico, you had that paradigm shift where my uncles would tell me they arrived to Estados Unidos and they went to CDCES Pizza for the first time. Remember, there was no TikTok. It was pre-internet. They'd never seen pizza before. They'd heard about it. They'd never seen pizza before, and they're like, ¿cuántos pedazos puedo comer? Like, all of them. You can eat. You're at CDCES Pizza, and they would eat, like, ¿cuántos más? Like, you can literally eat whatever you want. Welcome to America, for good or for bad, right? And so that paradigm shift, the reactive health culture, the understanding. Of course, the literacy is a major one, right? TikTok, for better or worse, there's a lot of misinformation, but at least the positive of social media is that it's putting a seed into people's brain that, hey, you should care about your health. And of course, socioeconomic status. Like, how can you expect someone to pay, especially if they're uninsured, to pay to go receive help when that's taking money off the table from their family members at home or from Mexico? Okay, here we go. The macho man syndrome. What are the most common phrases that men use to deflect and dismiss their health? So, I'm fine, no pasa nada, no tengo tiempo ni para morir. You shared one. What are other ones? Come on, guys, I know you all use them. I'm just joking. Voy a morir de algo. We're all going to die from something. What is it? De algo voy a morir, entonces. Any other ones?
I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time. ¿Qué dijo? Oh my God, yeah. Usually that's usually used about la suegra, not the. Oh, I guess it could be used for that. Or there's cosa mala nunca muere, but yeah, hierba mala nunca muere. There's another dicho. You got to be careful with that one though. But yeah.
I've also heard many times where they say, like for example, they're eating so many sweets, and like, pues, voy a morirme feliz.
Oh, sí. Sí, si me voy a morir, yo me voy a morir feliz. Oh man, this is great.
I want
Ilian.
to share a story. So I was in the hospital, and I remember I was working step-down cardiac
I love that one.
ICU. I'm a dietitian, so I was counseling a patient that had just had quadruple bypass surgery on, mire señor, es que ya no puede comer tanta barbacoa, ensalada, menudo. He had just come out of surgery, and you know what he told me? He was like, no, pues el cabo me va a morir. I'm like, then why did you have the
Saved your life.
surgery?
Yeah.
Like, if that's your mentality on, like, I don't care,
Yeah.
then why are you having quadruple bypass surgery if it doesn't matter?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. No, it's baffling sometimes, but sometimes it's like it's a programmed phrase that they don't actually mean. You know what I mean? It's like when I greet someone, like, how are you doing? I'm good. It's a good day. Like, you don't even remember saying it. They say it so many times that they believe it, and it's just an automatic response. So here's where the rubber meets the road, where I was fascinated by all of these ideas, and I wanted to make research out of it, because this is important stuff. It's very common, and we need to come up with structured ideas on how to overcome it. So when it comes to machismo, one of the models we've developed is that machismo is on a spectrum. You have the machismo that's not necessarily negative. It's just, and none of this is negative or positive. We're just interpreting it and trying to use it to help our understanding. Machismo where, there are gender roles. Tú cocinas, yo voy a trabajar, it provides a societal structure. So that's one extent of machismo. But then you get further and further, and the extreme is valemadrismo. And this is one of my proudest achievements. Yeah, you're laughing because it's like, this is a research term. We published valemadrismo in this article in 2020, and the Spanish dictionary made valemadrismo a word in 2021. So it was really cool. And I was like, maybe they saw my paper. Thanks. But whether they did or not, the importance was this is a real psychological phenomenon that we have to study. So machismo, beliefs and expressions of the conceptualizations of masculinity, often expressed as dominance, dismissive to inferiors, perceptions of indestructibility. Everything you guys were saying, my job is literally to make it sound fancy and practical, right? So indestructibility is a very important word. And an extract from that article is this: valemadrismo was defined as an ideology with attitudes of blatant, right, keyword blatant, disregard for risks or potential consequences. No pasa nada, blah, 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 all these that we've just been talking about. In the context of diabetes risk, the participants detailed that many Mexicanos vindicate their unhealthy lifestyle with the statements such as, I don't give a damn, me vale madre, or either way I'm going to die. Congratulations, you guys have your PhD in valemadrismo also. So, a more intense form of machismo characterized by sentiments of health disinterest and blatant rejection of disease. Literal translation, I don't give a damnism. So I put this up here and it's easy for y'all to understand because most of y'all are bilingual. But when I'm showing this to non-Spanish speakers, they're like, that makes total sense. And I'm like, in Spanish, we have a word. Your dad has, I don't give a damnism. And it's a real thing. It exists. And I was sitting there because, as you could tell, I'm really passionate about it. I'm always trying to figure it out. And like, how do I get them to care? How do I get them to care? And this is the first not very good. It's not a conceptual. It is a conceptual model, but it's not a dynamic model like we'll look at in a second. But this is valemadrismo at its core, where there are components of cavalierism showing lack of proper concern. There are components of stubbornness, and this one's so annoying, right? This is literally the definition of stubbornness. Dogged determination, not to change one's attitude or position on something, even in the presence or reason to do so. And then the rebelliousness, which is showing a desire to resist authority, control, or convention. Isn't that the most annoying part? If you're an esposa or if you're a healthcare professional, and like just for the sake of annoying you, they will dar la contra. Oh yeah. Yep, I know. And so we did a really interesting study. It's called the content analysis. And sorry for my biostatistician, it's not as cool as what y'all do, but it's still important work. We had 200 pages of transcript of interviewing the 40 Mexicanos, and you have tons of data there. And we defined the different components of valemadrismo. And here's where you start learning. So far we've had fun, but here's where you really start learning. Valemadrismo and machismo. Valemadrismo can be categorized into certain dimensions. Lack of empathy, right? Pues me vale, no lo tengo que ayudar a ese, no le va a pasar nada. Lack of respect, right? Lack of responsibility, auto-induced ignorance. All of these are valemadrismo separated into dimensions. Arrogant fearlessness, effort cessation. Your brain's working right now. Like she said this goes here, it fits into multiple categories. And what we found, and I can share the transcript here with you, we found 57 occurrences of valemadrismo. Really interesting stuff. We'll just leave it here. So let's take a look at some of these. Prácticamente como lo que quiero sin pensar lo que necesita mi cuerpo. Lack of responsibility. And I won't go through all of these. Y uno siempre dice, no, pues si tienes sal, pero también está bien rico, échamelo, right? He was diagnosed with ASCVD, diagnosed with hypertension or whatever, post-bypass. No, pues a mí no me importa si tiene sal. La cerveza, pero nos gusta mucho porque soy hombre y tengo que comer eso. There you go. Right? And you see that there are different dimensions and manners of expression. No que ensalada ni si fuera yo chivo. There you go. And remember, this is coming unprompted. Like I'm not asking them, tell me about machismo, tell me about valemadrismo, dame la contra. This is a spontaneous statement that's occurring in casual conversation. Like when I did these interviews, The secret is to go and you have cerveza and you have tacos. Well, they usually have it for you, and they're very comfortable, and they trusted me. So, and of course, it's fully confidential. Siempre los mexicanos decimos, si yo me siento bien, ¿para qué me voy al doctor? A mí no me duele nada. Right? Some of us are having a trauma response right now. Look at this one. This is so if the doctor's trying to tell you something, if they're super machista, valemadrista, they will not listen because the doctor's, as a rebellion against the doctor trying to scare them. They notice that they're using fear as a tactic. So para que yo tenga miedo, tú me tienes que sacar una espada, which is not true, but that's his way of rejecting it. No sabemos respetar las indicaciones del doctor. Como quiera me voy a morir. Es que te dicen, ya no tomas porque te va a hacer daño. Me vale madre, una más no pasa nada. Una no es ninguna y dos solamente una. Like they're just, the dichos are crazy where you give them a response and they always have a rebuttal for you. Okay, here we go. This one right here. This is fascinating. El sanchote. Anybody know el sanchote? I will never forget when I was interviewing this guy, I said, there was a question in that research article or in the interview that said, ¿Cómo podríamos motivar al hombre mexicano? I'm asking them, right? So might as well ask them the question. And one guy said, yo pienso que para motivarlos, metérselos por el lado de la familia, decirles, ¿qué tal si le faltas a tus hijos? Van a vivir tus hijos con necesidad, tu esposa con un sanchote. I was like, bro, wow. I was like, wow, he's just being completely honest. Who would say that? But it's true. And then he continues on, la esposa con un sanchote disfrutando de lo que has logrado tú, tu casa, tus ahorros. Y ahí está el sanchote bien a gusto. That's amazing. Anybody not know what a sanchote is? We can explain. It's the lover of your yeah, it's the mistress or whatever, the male version. So
Excuse me, so I guess one of the dichos that would be very relevant for that is like, nadie sabe para quién trabaja.
oh yeah.
You built all this for something.
Yeah. So don't let somebody take your stuff. Yeah.
I will say the first part where tell them that who's gonna be there for your kids doesn't work.
No.
I've used it, and they usually say, well, they don't know what's good for them. I'm paying for their school. I'm paying for their bills. Like who's
Yeah.
gonna do it if not me? But that one might work.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Whatever it takes. That's always my thing, is whatever will work. Like, I don't care about political correct. Of course, with patients it's different, but like in terms of us having conversations on what are strategies, nothing should be off the table because your people's lives are at stake. People's financial situations are at stake. You know, one that you could use is that I tell my dad, because he's 62, I say, hey, si tú no te cuidas y te mueres a los 67, y hubieras trabajado hasta los 75, ok, 76, 7, 75 son 8 años, $50,000 al año, me estás costando $400,000 en mi vida. Entonces ponte a trabajar, ponte a cuidarte, and again, this is coming from a male on male perspective, but maybe it could work. So one of the strategies is machismo versus machismo, valemadrismo versus valemadrismo. It can work. It's something worth trying. So yeah, we'll skip down. I don't even remember. Al caos me voy a morir. Y'all like the sanchote one. Very unique. Yeah, I won't even say this one, but there you go. That's the one right there. Another one too, and again, like when I share this with people who aren't in academia, that aren't educators, aren't in healthcare, I tell them, I'm like, I study this not to judge the men. I study it to understand them, because this is a real phenomenon, right? No te deja tu mujer, eres mandilón. You're henpecked. You're being told what to do. And they believe that. Like they believe it. If to take care of yourself, to take care of your medication is just to submit to someone you shouldn't be submitting to. And that's not necessarily meaning they're abusive or any of that. It's just a stigma you have within yourself, right? So it's a preconceived notion. And you'll notice all of these red ones, and I'll come back to that, but if you see here, and I don't have a slide for this yet because it's something that I've been working on. We started out with 6 dimensions of valemadrismo because those had been published not in the health literature but in other areas. But then there's another dimension of machismo that we're still working on. It's that mandilon, trying to avoid being a mandilon, trying to avoid, like, there's no way I can lose my foot because that's just part of who I am. There's no way I have to start medication because that's just not who I am. And I don't have it in the presentation, but what I think we're going to call that is the multidimensional machismo preservation model, wherein what happens is that the key word is preservation. You know, arrogant, fearlessness, all this stuff, they're forms of expression. But the reason valemadrismo and machismo exist, the core word is they're trying to preserve something. They're trying to preserve that I'm in charge of my life. They're trying to preserve that I'm in charge of my finances. Not el doctor, not la esposa, ni los hijos. That's what they're trying to preserve, that they're still sexually capable even though they have erectile dysfunction for the last 5 years. Like, that's the key word. If you're wondering how to help your dad or how to help your patients, you ask yourself this question: what are they trying to preserve? And that's where you start. Okay? Comments on that? Maybe preserve their money so that the Sanchote doesn't take their stuff when they die. Yeah. Interesting, right? How are we doing on time? I haven't even even. Wait, what time are we done? 30? Oh, man. Okay. Are we done at 30? This isn't an hour and 15 minutes? Oh, really? No, well, the next session starts at 2. I think it's 45. Okay. Well. Okay. Wow. Y'all good? Good. Learning some stuff? Okay. So here I've organized it a bit more. El valemadrismo, the me vale madre mentality. They neglect their health because they don't give a damn, nothing matters, and they go with the flow. Te lleva la corriente. It's an excuse. Here's an interesting one. And again, we're extracting all of these occurrences. We're trying to figure out, what do you guys mean? What do you mean? Here you go. This is the truth. It's an excuse. You sell yourself the idea of I don't give a damn. But you say that to be content with yourself. But inside, 9 times out of 10, you really care. You're just saying that so you don't have to do it. You're just saying it. They don't actually believe it. Just because someone says something doesn't make it true. Right? And here are more on the cultura is a major aspect of it, where Americans look at labels, ingredients, and are selective with their nutrition. We are not. We always say that, yeah, it has salt, but it's delicious, so do it. I'm not eating sal, no soy chivo, right? There's machismo there. Sometimes the wife says, don't eat that, and we respond, no, give me my brisket and chile. Tú sírveme, you know? It's rough stuff out there. If I feel fine, why go to the doctor? I don't feel any aches or pains at all. Why go to the doctor if I feel fine? What are y'all saying back there? Men and what?
No, I'm sorry. It's like
Men in general.
Men have to have their meat. Like they're
Yeah.
men and meat. It's just
There's something about it. A little fogata, a little chicharroneada, makes you feel secure.
like I'm a man. I'm cooking the meat.
Yeah, I don't know if that's active, like if it's that active in your brain, but it's just something like biological, because I hate to cook, but I'll grill, and I'm just like, I've achieved something. It's like your old evolutionary, I did something. Even though I went and picked it up at the carniceria, I feel like I did something today.
But like the whole thing
Take it
too
out of
with
the
like
bag.
Yeah.
man and their like barbecue pits. Like they have some of those are especially made a certain way. Like it's like
Oh yeah, it's their little baby. Don't touch it.
my dad.
You're not using the right pellets. Así no se hace, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the times when your husband tells you like, oh, yo te hago de comer hoy, yo hago de masada, tú nada más haces guacamole y con arroz.
Tú haces lo demás. And it is the easiest thing to do. The meat is the easiest thing. I feel like it's like a facade. It's like a fake. It's like, pero yo hice la carne. It's like, yeah, but the carne is the easiest thing. You just, right? You just flip it over. I grew up where my dad literally cooked the things till they were black, so that's what I thought carne was. Yeah. And then I started grilling myself, and I was like, so this is what carne is supposed to taste like. I still prefer medium well. I'll never eat medium rare. I know a lot of you guys probably like that. Here are some unique ones, right? And I've translated them to English, but ese güey está loco. That dude is crazy. El doctor ni sabe, right? Why change if either way I'm going to die? And here again, no way I'm going to let the doctor touch me. I'd rather die of cancer. It's machismo. Again, they're trying to preserve, and that's where I'm trying to learn and understand more, but they're trying to preserve this identity of no me toca otro hombre, no me dicen qué hacer. Like a colonoscopy is out of the question if you're that deep into it. And we'll talk about strategies. Doing whatever. This one's hilarious. We have the mentality of doing whatever we feel like doing, whatever the F we feel like doing. Or in Spanish, it's hacemos lo que nos da la gana, la regalada gana. And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you for your honesty, señor. This was fascinating research because it's community-based, participatory research. I'm like, hey, I'm not here to judge you. Just tell me the truth. Tú cómetelo. And here is the machismo, valemadrismo influence. Anybody recognize this? Coleadero, rodeo, chicharroneada. You can't just view it as an independent phenomenon. These are social phenomena also, right? Because men will go out, and if you're not drinking, we were talking about the intensity. Everybody else doing tequila shots, and you're the only one that doesn't. That peer pressure exists. But the good news is that the opposite can also exist, right? It's dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Well, if you're around men that are drinking all the time, that have the pancita mexicana, that have the cervezas 5 times a day, well, of course they feel judged because that's who they're hanging out with. But if you can appeal to machismo as independencia, like there was a guy, do I have it in here? There was a guy who said, no, pues si ellos se quieren morir, que se vayan a morir esos güeyes. And I was like, oh, dang. But he was using machismo to excuse himself from the typical machismo culture. And I was like, there you go. So you can, just how you can appeal to machismo to the extreme of que te vale your health, you can also use it to the extreme of que te vale lo que piensan los demás. You're on medication. Go ahead.
To add on to what you said, it's a good note because I remember speaking to one of my dad's best friends, and I know recently he had something go on, right? So he had surgery and he lost some weight. Well, now he's taking a step back from like the sodium, the sugar, all this other stuff. And he tells me, like, to what you said, I want to make sure that I'm good, and please tell your dad that I said that it's not too late.
Yeah.
Don't let him get to my age and then suffer from what we went through and all the drinking and stuff. Tell him that like he can still be a healthy guy,
Yeah.
It's not too late. And I told my dad that the other day, and también I know like a couple months ago, another best friend of my dad, he passed away because he had a heart attack. He wouldn't take care of himself.
How old?
Huh?
How old?
Like 51.
Too young.
He's
Yeah.
too young.
I knew it. Yeah. It's terrible.
So it was bad, and I mean, he was a really good guy. Like he really was. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, his habits were not the best, right? But he was a really good guy,
Yeah.
very family oriented. And then
Yeah.
my dad found out, man, that took him by surprise. So now I've seen my dad kind of like take more steps to be more health conscious.
Yeah.
Like that, so.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really important. And that's why I have these talks, is because together we can think of more ideas. Like there are so many analogies where, she stepped out of the room, but I had said that her phrase was like a below the belt shot, right? Where her tío was down and pretty much she was like, okay, pues que no pasa nada or whatever, right? And then in your example, you can use another like boxing analogy in that your dad was in a corner. Estaba en el rincón in the boxing ring. He was kind of on the defensive because he's scared now. Like, le pasó a ese. Yo le gano con 4 años. I'm a ticking time bomb. And so it's not always how you say it, it's when you say it. Yeah. See what I mean? That you have to, and when I interviewed these guys, and even to this day, like when I volunteer, and there's a guy who, his A1C was 8, now it's 14, and now it's 9 again. I love those guys and girls because I'm like, I want to learn from you. Like, tell me, what's the difference up here between you at 8 and you at 14, and now you back at 7 again. And the guy said, well, I'm an alcoholic, and sometimes it's just the process is going to run its course, and it's not that you did anything wrong, it's just that the timing's not there yet. The guy still has to live his life, but again, you have to have urgency because clearly men can die at 51, 55, 47.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a
It could be
timing
too.
thing.
I mean, I've known a guy that, like earlier when I used to, go with my friends and we go dancing and stuff, I knew this guy, super cool guy too. I'm 29.
Yeah.
This guy was like 31, 32, and he chose the wrong lifestyle, and just this year he passed away
Yeah, man, it's true.
at 32, I think.
There was, thanks for sharing. I sat at a dinner with a nurse practitioner, and she told me about a patient of hers that was from Mexico, died at 24 from a heart attack. He was like 500 pounds. Yeah, and I was like, 24, man. That's nothing. Like, that's not life at all. So yeah, that's why I really care about it, right? Like, today I'm a little tired because I gave a talk, I've given this talk, then I'm giving another talk, so I have to pace myself. But like when I just do one talk, and I'm talking like for the first time in a while on this topic, I always go really strong, and even today I'm going strong, and I always have people say like, wow, that's my papa, that's my tío, and these are people that we're trying to help. You guys see them out there. I talked about it, the construction workers, the señoras that are too dedicated to their familia, the happy-go-lucky people. No, pues vamos a cocinar para la familia. And I'm like, we're going to die young, and we shouldn't. We should try and change that trajectory. Yeah.
My parents both didn't live to be 65, but my dad would say, I'm not going to take that pill because it says here, don't drink alcohol with its medication.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And buddies are coming over, we're going to play cards, and we're going to drink.
Because that's his favorite hobby. And again, that goes back to preservation. Why is he not listening? It's because he's trying to preserve the favorite part of his life, which is the drinking with his friends and playing cartas. So.
Even contrary to that, like when you see the commercials with medications, like side effects may include, and you see all the side effects, and I've had a lot of patients that are like, well, if I'm gonna have these side effects and still be able to drink what I want, versus taking a pill that's still gonna make me sick and give me all this, I might as well drink the beer.
Yeah. What about the side effects of alcohol dependence? Like, what if we made a commercial on that? So not just physical too. I mean, a big reason I do this too is because there's a lot of, what's the right word? There are a lot of unhappy families out there because of the valemadrismo, right? Maybe you're a daughter, maybe you're a son, maybe you're an esposa. Like, that breaks apart families because the valemadrismo is too isolating. And so it's just kind of me on my own, and la familia, everybody does their own thing. That's just the mentalidad, and that can really damage families. And you see it, right? You see it and excuse the word, but you see it in the young girls who are in college, and, for better or worse, like, I'm glad they're empowering themselves, but they have soy chingona or whatever. And that's good. We're trying to get ahead, but it's also oftentimes from the PTSD or the trauma of having a dad that's not supportive and always beating you down. So it's not just the physical health, it's the emotional, the relationship health that is important. So I should probably give this talk to some behavioral health people because they would probably have even more stuff. Okay. So let's talk about what the heck do we do with all of this? We have models, we have psychological phenomena that we're trying to explain. We know their language. How do we use it against them? How do we use it in support of them? However you want. So the first thing is to understand its function, right? So it's a figure of speech, right? They might not actually mean it. It's just, it's what you grew up with. It's like when people say, solo Dios sabe. Like, some people say that they don't even believe in God, right? It's the truth. It's like, solo Dios sabe. I thought you were atheist. I'm not saying, I love you either way, but I'm like, So sometimes it's just a figure of speech. It's a basic firewall. Keeps the conversation going. Or you want to keep the conversation going and dig deeper when you're working with them. It can be used, the valemadrismo, those phrases exist to deflect responsibility. Well, sometimes it's to avoid the inconvenience or the overload. Again, what are they trying to preserve? They're already maxed out hasta la raya, right? With bills to pay, with houses being more expensive. my hija and my hijo is going to go to college. Like, I don't have time to take the time for myself. That's just the mentalidad, whether it's true or not, right? So what can you do to help them? It's not judging them. It's what can you do to take something off your dad's plate of life so that you can help take food off his plate also, right? I always say that. If your plate of life or your plate up here is too full, you'll never be able to change your physical plate because you're on overload. So help them out. And they're not going to want to listen. Like, no, yo puedo. Just do it for them. Here's what I did with my dad. I told him to check his blood sugar. He was undiagnosed. His blood sugar was 290. I was like, aha, great. I knew it. I had an intuition about it. Not that I was celebrating, but I'm glad I caught it early. And I literally scheduled his appointment with this doctor for him. I paid for it in advance. And I told him, después del trabajo de this time, aquí, here's the dirección, you have to go there. And I lied to him and said, ya pagué $200. $200! Because they're cheap in a phrase. They're like, gastaste esta. I'm like, I already paid for it. You better go. And they go. Because you laid out the red carpet. And because there's a weight to it now. Like, ya usé tu tarjeta, Dad. Ya tienes que ir. Whatever it takes. I'm serious. When I say whatever it takes, I do whatever it takes. And he went. Everything's much better now. And, these are just different angles. Minimize the fear. A lot of times it's that diabetes equals amputations. Diabetes equals insulina for life. Diabetes equals laying on dialysis for the rest of my life. Make it less scary. What were you saying? Vision loss. You're like, hey, that's not what diabetes is. That's what diabetes is para tu amigo que es valemadrista. And that'll be you if you don't do something different, but that doesn't have to be you. What am I talking about here? Oh, yeah. So another reason, so these are all reasons why you might hear it or why it exists. The reason a lot of valemadrismo exists, in my theory or hypothesis, that in the past, if you're talking about, like, if your dad's from a descendant of the Aztecas, right? If you're an Aztec man, you had to go out and fight the jaguars. You had to go out like, te tenía que valer madre. How are you going to live a life in the jungle in fear? You're going to die, right? So the valemadrismo was supposed to ayudarnos salir adelante, but now it backfires because it allows you to neglect the need to change your health. So here you go. A few strategies. Be gentle and minimize the danger. No es pa tanto. No te van a quitar los pies, no te van a whatever. Because sometimes we use that, but you should do the opposite. Or sometimes you're too gentle and you should be more severe. You have to practice different things. And if you mess up, because you will mess up at some point, I won't say that one. You will mess up because there's no roadmap to this. It's kind of luck of the draw, right? So what works for one man might not work for the other because of timing, because of past experience. So it's okay. Like, if you mess up, just say, okay, now it's my brother's turn to talk to my dad. Now it's my tia's turn. Just keep trying different people. Keep it real. Read their mind. This is probably one of my best stories that I ever used my research to help a guy. There was an 83-year-old guy from Colombia. His blood sugar kept going, His blood sugar kept going up to 350 and 400. He's 83 years old. He wasn't listening to his wife. He wouldn't listen to the doctor. He was on basal insulin. The doctor wanted him to go on mealtime. So 4 injections versus 5 injections versus 2. And I was like, yes, I'm glad they sent him here. And he's sitting across from me. Use this tactic. You have to kind of make a fake excuse of why they're not doing it and then read their mind. So what do I mean? I sat across from him and I said, no quiere tomar la insulina porque le tiene miedo a las agujas. That was fake. He was going to fall for it. Le tiene miedo a la insulina. O, and this is the reading the mind, o porque tiene 83 años, sus papás nomás vivieron hasta 63, entonces ya ha vivido más de 20 años más de lo que pensaba que iba a vivir. Y no sabe si tiene 3 meses o 3 años, entonces ya ni para qué hacer los cambios so I can keep my routine. He was like, yeah, that was it. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I was like, pues tómese la insulina. I'll see you in 3 weeks or whatever. He took the insulina. Now, that wouldn't work for everybody, but make a fake, like, hey, ¿le tienes miedo a la aguja o no quieres gastar el dinero? It's a distraction, and then you act as if you're reading their mind, and it works. It can work.
What was the average age of these 40?
So they had to be at least above 40. The average age was 54 to 55. But this was 5 years ago, so those men are now 60 years old, roughly. And I did that on purpose because the 40-year-olds now are different than my dad's generation that are 60, which are different from the ones that literally are like, you might have guys here who are 80 and 90, and those are the guys that grew up, lived in the rancho, and the kids sent them money, right? Versus my dad's generation, the people born in the 60s and 70s are the ones that came here and lived here. And then after that, now you have more Chicanos. They're all different.
That's
See
why
what I
asked,
mean?
'cause I was curious about that.
Yeah, yep. It's a really good point. Just keep trying, plant the seed, and here you go, to wake us up a little bit. Both of these strategies can work. Have you guys seen this prediabetes assessment? You got to look them up on YouTube. Here's the nice way of saying, hey, let's do an assessment on prediabetes. I'll put the volume up because I like this song too. Isn't he a cute little dog? Sorry, I'm a softie for animals. I study macho men, but I'm a softie. See, look at that guy. There you go. That could work. It could work. Right? Genius, whoever came up with that. Now, so same concept, but totally different strategy.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But you probably won't. You're busy. Kids, work, show coming back in 48 seconds.
There you go.
So let's do this now. Hold up one finger if you're a man. Women, 0. 3 more fingers if you're over 60. 2 over 50. 1 over 40. If you're not sure, keep in mind you're sitting on a couch right now. So 1 more finger if you're not very active. 1 finger if yes, 0 if no. 1 yes, 0 no. Next, find the body type that looks most like you and hold up that many fingers while I look around awkwardly.
This would work for men, not for women.
And that's it.
More than likely.
If you're holding up 5 fingers or more, you probably have prediabetes. Sorry to be so blunt, but hey, you're busy.
See, look, I love that. I love that video. And I think the culture has changed. That is it's very hard to find that now. It's cool. Hey, you're busy. Like the CDC, I don't know if they've removed it or I don't know what happened, but this one, I can't find it as much anymore. I have to really dig for it. But again, same people understanding that there are different approaches, right? One is super nice and little cute little dogs. The other one's like, ooh, which one's your body type? Man, that's a harsh one. Yeah. So, sorry, I need to leave time for questions. So, time it right at their lowest point can work. Make it easy. Schedule their appointment. Bring in an outsider. Hey, ahora escuché un chavalo que dice que habla de, pues maybe I'm not a chavalo anymore. Uno que habla de machismo y valemadrismo. Ese güey ni va, ¿qué va a saber? And then you can use that as a conversation starter. You can, at my own expense, if your dad's saying que no sé nada, you can use it as a conversation starter. And then flip it. It's not just, ¿qué tienes que cambiar para prevenir algo? It's, ¿qué podemos cambiar so that you feel better, dude? Like, you will feel better. If you are 15 pounds less, I promise you will feel better. And then here's the harsh reality is that sometimes, like when I ask those men, like, pues, ¿qué haces? Déjalos morir. I was like, wow. Now that's an honest answer. Sometimes, I mean, people just have the right to live their life the way they want to live it. And it's our job to try and try and try. But at the end of the day, people have to live their life the way they're just going to live it. And I don't agree with let them die, but it's their life, their choice. Okay. And with that, oops. Yeah, again, this is why I'm super motivated to help the Mexicanos. Look at those freaking guys, dude. when I talk to those guys, they're like, wow, que suave, eres doctor. And I'm like, bro, you're on the roof and it's freezing outside. I was like, you're the cool one here. So learn to motivate the unmotivated care. They deserve it. And again, this is my contact information. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, and I really like to connect with people there and see what all you guys are doing. And there's my website. And any questions? Sorry, I forgot that I needed time for questions, but we were pretty interactive. Any questions? 5 minutes, and then we go to the next one. Nope. I think we talked the whole time. You have a question? No. All right. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
With the group of men that you interviewed, do you plan to do like a follow-up to see if maybe their mindset has changed or their children?
Oh, man, that's an interesting one. Well, some of them I've interacted with since. So the short answer is I hadn't thought of that, but I'd be interested in doing it again. But I've interacted with them after the fact and their kids, their children, because I went to Texas Women's University, and so I recruited indirectly by reaching out to my amigas and amigos. I was like, hey, is your dad a rancho mexicano that's a little heavy? Like, tell him I want to talk to him. I'll pay him $40. Because you can't, like, I went to the pulga, and everybody ran away, and I was like, oh, crap, now I learned. That's not how you recruit. I went to the pulga, 4 hours. I was like, hey, señor. And, like, that does not work. Don't. And so when people asked, I was like, I could tell you what not to do. But, and so that's how I met, like, the family, the daughter or the son, and they connected with their dad, and he reached out to me, and that's how I did it. But, yeah, I think a follow-up would be really interesting. It's just, I'd like to do it, but I literally have probably 20 articles that I could write with my current data. But unofficially, I mean, I talk to those guys all the time. So, but that's a good point. If anybody, and if any of y'all have family members that want to get their PhD or people that do research, like, the importance of research is like, there were people that did studies on Mexican farmers that were here, like the agricultural researchers. And then there was a guy out of Arizona, and we were pretty much the only ones that studied Mexican origin men, which are different from Tejano men, which are different from California, third-generation men. So these are Mexican immigrants during a certain time period. People should continue to grow on it and build on it, because ultimately I just have one lens, one ability. But yeah, if anybody wants to carry the torch, go ahead. Iliana.
I have a question. What has been your experience, or why do you think sometimes men are selective about who they listen to? And I'll give you an example. So I was working with a patient that needed to be on insulin, and of course he didn't want to inject his insulin, but he was willing to drink those bugs that eat bread.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but it was disgusting.
No, listen to Dr. Fulano.
And he told me, he's like, well, I drink one of these every morning. And I'm like, you can drink a cup of live bugs, and you can't inject insulin?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're like some unos, like little bugs.
I've never heard that. Oh, really?
And the animals would feed on the bread, and
Yeah.
you would like scoop them up and drink them.
I would just tell him that.
And I'm like, so I didn't understand why he's doing something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Why that and not this?
Conveniencia. But, yeah.
That's crazy. You can drink live bugs and you can inject.
That's a good question. Honestly, if you would have asked it earlier, I might have brain power left. Yeah, that's true. There's social. Yeah, yeah.
And I also.
1 sec. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I also think that, I don't know, you make me think on the esposa of the macho, because why we're like raising boys like this?
Yeah, you're
I mean,
continuing.
like,
Yeah.
it's something that we need to try to understand, like the
Yeah.
female part.
Yeah.
Because at the end, we are responsible of that education.
Yeah.
So we are like raising the machos?
Yeah. I'm trying. Well, it's hard because raising your kid as a macho when you were born in the rancho was advantageous, right? Because the machismo helped them in the rancho. But yeah, I don't know. It's every person, so machismo is not exclusive to men, right? Because you'll have in the extreme is a chingona on the female side, where it's just super independiente, no me digan nada. So it's not necessarily just machismo exclusively, but here's what it comes down to. You have to raise your kids to not be excessively prideful, whether they're a man or a woman. Like, it comes down to pride, because as I was trying to figure this out, I was like, oh man, I love words and trying to figure it out. And I was like, wait, someone told me it's stubbornness and it's pride. That's what it is. So work on that with your kids. Yeah.
I know you mentioned that your research was surrounding around first generation
Alzheimer's disease.
And the
Yeah.
ones you did get were 55, 54.
Born in Mexico, coming here.
Did you interview any that were younger?
No, because it's a different group.
I thought they came from Mexico here?
Well, that's why that's a whole nother group. Like, I'm fascinated by that, because all of these men born in like late 1950s, 1960s, they experienced the rancho when it was pre-electricity, right? So that's a very unique upbringing, versus now, if I were to interview Mexican origin men who are Gen Z and they're like 23, they don't really know that rancho. That rancho doesn't exist anymore. So they've been on TikTok since they were in Mexico. They've had iPhones since they were in Mexico. So that would be a totally different research endeavor. And a lot of them wouldn't even use dichos.
Because I
Yeah.
have cousins that were born in Mexico. So my mom's from Hidalgo, Mexico, and a small little town called Quetzalapa.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not as advanced as anyone thinks. Like, it's a rancho. Yes, there's cell phone towers and everything. But they're very machista. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and not in a negative way. Like, they're not like,
Yeah.
you have to do this.
Machismo can be positive. Fuerza, family dedication, all that stuff.
The
Yeah.
hardest part is getting them to go to the doctor. 'Cause
Yes.
One of my cousins got in an accident with his livestock, and I was like, you need to go get checked, because it's not normal for you to get up from bed and be in pain.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, because ¿quién va a cuidar las vacas? O ¿quién va a darle comer a las gallinas? And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you die, nadie.
Yeah, exactly. No va a haber nadie.
And
You have to be
I know
ready.
that
Yeah,
it's
go
like
ahead.
a generational thing, but I think it's an environmental thing, because
Oh, yeah.
that's the way that they've grown up. And compared to my cousins that live here,
Yeah.
they
You
go
see
to
the same thing in rural Oklahoma, rural Appalachia, rural everywhere. Like, it's culture and beliefs are a product of the environment that you're built in. They work together. And so the last thing I'll say before y'all head out, you have to be ready a la hora de la hora, right? When they get sick, you take them to the doctor. When they're in pain, you make that appointment and you take them. When they're feeling kind of down, or when they're doubting, you have to do it. Then you won't have another opportunity. So thank y'all for listening. Hopefully you learned something.